Hi guys, this is Swati Chaudhary and we are back with a new video of vRealize Operations Manager version 7.5. So we are going to talk about the installation types, general setup steps and format that this version supports. But before doing that, I hope you've analyzed your environment and chosen a size for your deployment according to your needs. For more help and information, you can refer to this KB article from VMware. So guys, now let's move on to the installation steps. So first you have to deploy the OVF to create a master node. Run your initial setup step to create the master node. Set up your data nodes, enable HA, set up your remote collector nodes, and log in for the first time and configure the new installation. The three steps here are optional and will only be applicable depending upon the size of vRops cluster that you have designed for your environment. So now let's talk about the installation types. As you may have noticed when I previously went through the general installation steps, I've only mentioned OVF as the deployment type. This is because as of version 6.7, OVF is the only supported format. So when the vRealize operations initial setup program begins, we'll see later in this video, you can select one of the following installation options or types. To start with Express installation, this option is the quickest and easiest option. You can use this option to set up the first node in vRops cluster. This option uses the default values for all the configuration options. You can use this option to set up the first node in vRops cluster. However, unlike Express installation, you can configure advanced configuration options like password for the admin user account, choose between your own certificates, your name of node, and etc. You will be using this third option only to add the extra nodes to the cluster, only after the first node has been already configured. So guys, we will go through the process of deploying a fresh vRops instance and perform some initial configurations to make it ready for use. I'm going to deploy a master node, a data node, and a remote collector for my vRops Manager cluster in this video. So deploying the vRops 7.5 virtual appliance is very much similar to any standard OVF or OVA deployment that you must have previously done on vSphere. I've pre-downloaded the OVF from my vmware.com. Let's browse on to my OVF. Select your OVA template and click Next. Specify the name of the virtual machine and the folder it will reside in. I will rename this virtual machine. Generally, a naming convention is followed in all the organizations or projects, and so you should definitely follow one. So now you need to place your machine into any of the cluster. You should always place your managing machines in your management cluster because that is the right thing to do. Since my deployment is just for test purpose, I'm going to place it into my compute cluster. Now these are all the details of the template. You can see the disk size it will occupy depending on the disk format that you will select, an operating system that this vRops appliance runs on. Now let's move forward. Let's accept the license. This is where you can select the size of deployment. VMware gives us 5 sizes to select for vRops deployment. All the remote collectors are available in 2 sizes. Like I mentioned earlier, you should first analyze your environment, find answers for questions like how big is my environment that I need to monitor and how big it can grow, and then design your vRops cluster. In this deployment, I'll be doing a small, which is 4 vCPU and 16 GB RAM. Extra small and small nodes are primarily intended for test and proof of concept environments. Now this is the data store where the virtual machine will be placed and in what disk format it will be placed, be it thick or thin. For our critical or management machines, it is recommended that we select the thick provision eager 0 option whenever possible. I'll go with thin provisioning here because this is just a test deployment and I don't want to have a resource crunch in my lab environment. Select the data store and click Next. Just select which port group the virtual machine's network card will be assigned to and click Next. You need to select the proper time zone that will be common for all of your nodes. So I will now give the other networking details here, be it my gateway, DNS, IP, and subnet. Now once all the correct information is entered, You should click Finish. Congratulations, you have just deployed your first node. Now similarly, I am going to deploy two other nodes that will be my data nodes and remote collectors for this vRops cluster. And I will deploy a third virtual machine that will be my remote collector. Also, just to mention, I've already done my DNS entries for all these three virtual machines. Now I've successfully deployed all my three virtual machines. Now after deploying, ensure that you have powered on your virtual machines. This might take some time. Once the virtual machines have completely booted up, you're ready to begin the configuration of your vRops cluster. Simply browse on to the FQDN of your first VM that you deployed. This will be my master node. You should now be presented with the following screen. This step is pretty straightforward as it contains three installation types that we earlier discussed about. We also discussed the difference between the installation types in this video. Since this is the first node in my vRops cluster instance, I will choose the new installation method. First wizard page is the getting started page. This is showing us a workflow diagram of the process of setting up vRops. Now next step will be to set the administrator password. Enter a password that fits the minimum requirements listed on this page. Now once entered, click next. The third step on the list is to choose the certificate. You can either choose to use a self-signed certificate or the one issued by a trusted certificate authority. A valid VROP certificate signed by a trusted private or public CA is vital during installation, especially if this VROps instance will go into production. Also, you have to configure a VROps certificate signed by a CA before you configure your endpoint operations management agent. If self-signed certificates are used, the first node becomes the CA for the VROps cluster and will issue certificates to any future nodes. So I'm going to use the default certificates. Deployment setting is the fourth section. In this section, enter your master node name and an NTP server. Even though the first node of vRops cluster is always the master node, initially there is no guarantee it will remain so. This would be the case if a vRops cluster was deployed and high availability was enabled, but then at a later time the first node were to fail. As the master is a role that can move between two servers, master and master replica, it is recommended to use a name that is relatively generic. The NTP server will only be added if vRops server is able to connect to the service. The master node will become an NTP server itself for other data nodes in the cluster. Now this is the new feature that we've got from 6.7 version of vRops. We can add the already deployed data nodes to the vRops cluster here. And another thing that I can do here is to enable HA. Yes, I can make any of the nodes that I add here as a master replica. Now I will add the virtual machine that I deployed second in the order, which was supposed to serve as my data node. This will be my node address, or you can use the IP address too. And now I will add my third node, which would be my remote collector for this cluster. This is the same VM that I deployed third in the order. Once you've done all the configuration, click Next to move on. So this step is the last step, but here we don't actually do anything. We just list the next steps involved in the configuration of new vRops installation. So just click Finish. Now you will be redirected to the admin interface of vRops. To get to this interface manually, just enter your IP or FQDN/admin. Now let's wait for this cluster to be fully online. This might take some time and it totally depends on the size of the environment that you have deployed. Also, if you're completely unsure of the eventual end state of the environment regarding how many objects your vRops will be collecting metrics from, it is recommended to start off with a smaller number of nodes. This is because, like many things in life, it is easier to add than to take away. So guys, this might take 15 to 20 minutes for your cluster to be completely online. So now my cluster is completely online, and here are some pretty interesting features that we have got in the admin UI. I would like to specially mention about the administrator settings. So these are basically the settings that can help you recover your admin passwords. So now let's move forward and log into your vRops product UI to complete my configuration. I'll use the same admin credentials that I've set in my initial setup steps while configuring my master node. Now once successfully logged in, we are presented with a new window. Now click Next to continue. You will be presented with the normal end user licensing agreement. Click Accept and continue. Now this is where you will enter your vRops 7.5 license keys. If you're licensed for vCloud Suite or vRealize Suite, that license is what you would be using here. Another option is to use the trial and enter a permanent license later. So I will continue with the product evaluation keys. Now on this VMware's Customer Experience Improvement Program CEIP page, we select if we want to join the CEIP program. Joining this is something you may consider doing if you are deploying a production instance of vRops. Now click Next to move on, and on this last wizard page, click Finish to complete it. Once the configuration has finished, the web page is redirected to the Solutions section on the Administration tab within the vRops UI. So here you can configure your vCenters that vRops is to monitor. You can also choose to configure the other management packs that are available by default in this section of vRops. Or you can later come here and activate these packs as and when required and configure them accordingly. So as you go on to your home page, you can see you are presented with the two warnings. The first one is regarding the evaluation license and the other one is regarding to the cost. So setting currency for calculating your cost is one of the initial steps that you should do after deploying your vRops instance. Also, setting up this action is permanent. You cannot modify your currency at any point of time once you've set your currency. So this is just one time setting. So guys, now at this point of time, we have deployed one master node, one data node, and a remote collector node. So the other steps in the series could be adding another data nodes to expand your vRops cluster. So just for the sake of your knowledge guys, I'm listing down these additional steps that you require for adding an extra node to your vRops cluster. You should deploy the another node with same OVF that we used initially in this video. Once you've deployed your node, browse the URL of your newly deployed node and choose Expand an existing installation. Give this new node a name and select node type. Then give your IP and FQDN of master node and admin credentials and click Finish and wait for the cluster to be completely online. It is recommended that all nodes be added before the cluster is originally started. However, you can also add a node to an existing running instance as this is also supported and it works well. The process is completely same. So thank you guys for watching this video. Stay connected to Dry Ice Autonomics for more videos on vRealize suit products. And do mention your queries in the product section of this video.